Steve, it's early voting continuing this week. What are you thinking? How are things going this week?
Well, it's that week after all the events have ended, Chad, and as a candidate, so you're at that point. You're making sure you can do everything you can do to win. Early voting numbers are up. It's also the realization that tomorrow is the last Saturday that you can early vote, and there's a lot of things going on May 7th. You've got Cinco de Mayo. I mean, I can't remember all. There's a lot of events, so we certainly are doing everything we can to encourage people to get out and vote before May 7th.
Are you encouraged by the turnout?
Yes, I think any greater turnout or high turnout we feel like benefits us for sure.
What are you hearing from the residents in District 4? And that's the seat that you're seeking, because I've heard mixed, not mixed reviews, but mixed thoughts in District 4, that there are a lot of people who are undecided, that there were people who thought they were for one candidate and now they're maybe going back to another candidate. What are you hearing out of District 4?
Well, we do. We would agree there is a group of undecided. Obviously, the people that we also find there's a group that has already made up their mind, and we feel like that's good for us. What we're hearing when we visit with them is people really appreciate private business experience. When we talk about how we feel about taxes and the fact that we've never raised them resonates with people. I believe in smaller government, something that we worked on at the school district, and those things resonate with people. So we've been calling this week. We've been walking blocks all week, and so we have been visiting with lots of residents, lots of constituents in District 4. So, we're hearing good things.
I want to get your reaction to something that your opponent, Councilman Geralt, said yesterday, because you brought up taxes again today. Mm-hmm. You've been making that a pretty big part, I think, of one of your talking points out there, and about why they should make a change. He says, yes, I voted to raise taxes, but I also went in and lowered fees. So they were able to offset, and you could deduct the tax increase where you weren't able to deduct the fees that were out there. Is that a good argument in your mind?
It's a poor argument. So what I did is I applied that to myself. I pulled my tax bills out and I pulled my water bills out, and I still end up paying more. If you use the argument of the income tax deduction, that doesn't work for commercial businesses. They're already deducting their water bill, so that doesn't apply. It's a weak argument. And then the water meter, again, only applies to those people paying taxes that have a water meter. There's a lot of people that pay property taxes, say on land that doesn't have a water meter. So, when we did the math, I think I guess you call it fuzzy math, the math doesn't work. And so, from my perspective, taxes should be the last resort, and I think you should communicate clearly when you're trying to do something. Let's not propose something that people don't understand, because quite frankly, people don't understand that math.
He also mentioned in the budget, I asked him the question, could you not lower both? Lower taxes, lower fees, can you not do both? He said that in the budget, we've got to pay for, you got to pay for the government. There are things the government has to pay for. You have to have a budget out there. He said there's not a lot of fat in the budget. You're used to dealing with a budget at LISD. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've gone through the entire, City of Lubbock budget or not, but do you think that that's a true statement, or with your experience over at LISD, is there room to cut?
Well, we have an $800 million budget, Chad. It's a lot of money to me. I think you would agree. I've been faced with the same thing at LISD, and when you first get there, when you first look at it, what do they tell you, or administrators might tell you? They say, Mr. Elected Official, you're going to have to consider raising taxes. And so that's when you've got to have principled people say, no, we're going to take a hard look at this. And it depends on, if you look superficially at things, there may not be any fat. But that's what we did at LISD is when you look deeper into the animal and get into the guts of the thing, then you figure out, well, this, 1, 2, and 3 are run inefficiently, and we're wasting taxpayer dollars there. And everyone will recall, and I've talked about this several times, that resulted in some tough decisions where we closed or consolidated 10 schools. But at the end of the day, we served our constituents better. We served students better. which is an ongoing challenge in public school. But we also created savings by eliminating costly facilities. So is there opportunity? I can't imagine that there's not. I just think you have to elect that individual that understands how to dig deeper. And I think that's where my business experience comes in.
When looking at the budget, let's go back to LISD. We all know about the merging and closing of some schools out there. Are there any other examples that you can point to where you went through the budget and said, you know what, this is something that we should trim in order to save money?
Absolutely. You know, government's held, and I think I've said this on your show before, government's held unaccountable grow. Okay? And so, you know, and you see it here in our community. I mean, you see it happened in the school district, it happens at the city, it happens at Texas Tech. We made a decision to do a reduction in force. In other words, we had determined that we had a number of positions at central office that were not necessary. And so you eliminate those positions, and you know, I think it was a $3 million savings, but again, tough decisions. The school district continues to operate, but yes, there are other things besides those closures that you look at in budgets, and one thing we did was a staff reduction.
Is it hard running for office, running for Lubbock City Council, and running on a platform of I'm not going to raise taxes, or promising we're not going to raise taxes?
I mean, in Lubbock, I mean, I don't know, is it hard to run that way? I mean, you understand that's what the constituents expect in a conservative community.
Right.
And they expect us to run the government efficiently. And so I don't know if it's difficult. I mean, the job's difficult after you get elected, but what would be difficult if we went around saying we wanted to do, you know, if we wanted to raise taxes, which is not the case, but, you know,
I guess what I mean is for those candidates who are running who say we don't want to raise taxes, and you're one of those candidates, we are not going to raise taxes. You look at the city council, and it seems like year after year we keep adding projects, we keep adding Omni buildings, we keep adding different projects where you add more and more to the budget. They're not. It doesn't seem like they're trimming anywhere. It seems like they're adding to the budget. You're running for office. You're going to have to take over, if elected, some of these projects that the city council's already committed to.
Okay, good point. Yeah, that part will be difficult. You know, I mean, new city council at this point is probably handcuffed to Citizens Tower, especially since they've already issued the bond. So it'll just require, again, a sharper pencil when you go look at projects and making sure that whatever, you know, it happens with Citizens Tower, that it's done in a very conservative, I think minimalistic is probably the best way to describe it. I mean, that nothing needs to be overdone on anything, and then it's going to require us to go look at some, you have to look at the whole organization to find some efficiencies. But I do think, you know, we live and city government benefits, I mean, from appraisal increase. So there is always some increase in revenue there. And, the other thing you got to focus on is, the core services. I mean, we need to be really good at delivering services, you know, public safety, water, sewer, electric, solid waste. We need to be really good at those things, and we don't need to focus on other things.
Visiting with Steve Massengale, candidate for Lubbock City Council in District 4. Let's take the break. When we come back, we'll have one more segment with Steve Massengale. Steve, thank you again for coming out.
You bet. Glad to be here.
Received a tweet. And this is an interesting idea. What would you think about a 1-year moratorium on all new non-emergency projects?
A moratorium on all new, well, that's pretty broad. I guess you'd have to define non-emergency, and then where, you know, there are projects that I think you could, that are good for the city that might not cost anything. So,
well, City Hall. Emergency, non-emergency.
Well, I guess that you're assuming that I don't think City Hall's an emergency.
Right.
But I think you inherit it either way. So I think it's something interesting to consider. I think you need to focus on those projects that are most critical for again, those core services, but I think it's something interesting to consider.
Let's talk about some of the other issues that may come up if you're elected on the city council, things that have come up before. And I think this has been brought up at maybe one or two of y'all's forums, and that's the issue of payday lenders. who are out there. I think Midland recently, maybe last year, started putting some more heavy regulations on payday lenders. Dallas has done so. It seems like city by city, more people are putting regulations on payday lenders. What do you think should be done, if anything, regarding payday lenders here in Lubbock?
I think predatory lending is an issue. I guess from my perspective, I think that's a state banking or usury law. I would like to see our local state delegation work on that. I deal with the perils of payday lending at my own business. I have some staff that have been victims, if you want to call it, of that. There was a group this weekend that had a forum, and they asked that question, and I'm fully supportive of working with them and figuring out a way, but I stopped short of, they had proposed an ordinance, and I couldn't in my right mind, I cannot support that ordinance. I'm very leery of any regulation on business, Chad, and when it's appropriate. I don't know that city by city or community by community is the best way to address this issue. Again, I think it should be probably addressed statewide. I don't like it. Like I said, we've dealt with it in our own business, and we've counseled our employees on payday lenders. I just not sure that a regulated ordinance in our community is the answer. I would much rather educate the consumer and then let the market decide, and let the educated consumer decide that there's other ways for them to borrow money when they have needs than payday lending.
What about a new ordinance on texting and driving? That always seems to pop up every year. I think your opponent has brought it up a couple of times.
Yeah. Again, I think those are things that, again, that's a personal liberty thing. I guess maybe that's in the seatbelt issue. I'm probably not going to support addressing that, Chad. I think that's getting off in the weeds of some things when we ought to be focused on being really good at a few things and not focusing on that kind of stuff.
The state legislature in the last session, they moved to take a focus on local ordinances that they believed were too restrictive, and really shouldn't be local issues, should be statewide issues. There are some locally elected officials, not just here in Lubbock, but everywhere, who either have a problem with that or they welcome it, or they're mixed on it because they still want local control, and Republicans love to have and conservatives love to have as local control as possible. Where do you think, where is the line where the state should step in and say, okay, stop what you're doing, you're going too far?
I guess it depends on the category of the law. I'm a local control guy myself, and what I want to see, is us making decisions and us impacting our community here. And I guess it depends on what the ordinance is, but in some cases I would probably agree with them that some of these ordinances are more restrictive than necessary. So, there might be times that I would support that or support the state looking at some of those things. But again, I'm a local control guy. Sort
of a case by case basis, maybe?
Absolutely.
Okay. Visiting with Steve Massengale, candidate for District 4, Lubbock City Council. If you have a question, you can call in. We do have time for that, or you can send in a message via email, chat@kfyo.com. An issue that has become a national issue, and in some places a statewide issue. In Alabama this past week it became a local issue, and that is the issue of religious liberty laws. We're conservative out here, for the most part. We're conservative out here in West Texas. But every now and then you see some of these liberal laws that do pop up, liberal ordinances that pop up or that are at least pursued. If, and you know what I'm talking about with the transgender bathroom, all that kind of stuff going on with Target. If a group came to the Lubbock City Council, and you're on the City Council, and said, we want to pass some kind of ordinance telling businesses you need to have everyone use any bathroom or restaurant, how do you approach that?
You already know how I'm going to answer this, because especially restrictions on business, and, again, why get in the weeds in that? I don't, you're born a man, go to the men's bathroom. You're born a woman, go to the woman's bathroom.
Should the city even have an ordinance that says we're not going to put any kind of we're not going to tell businesses. We're not going to, if you're a business, whatever you want to do is fine. It's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, let the market decide. It's kind of like we've talked about the smoking ordinance. Why we waste time on things like smoking ordinances, let's just let businesses decide. I mean, it doesn't mean I'm not a smoker. I've chosen not to smoke, but I think people, if they have a right, if they so choose to do that, they can do that, and then they can make their decision on where they're going to go out in public and smoke. So, no regular, I'm going to be for minimal, very, very limited regulation on business.
Visiting with Steve Massengale. I want you to address one other issue that your opponent brings up. And he's brought this up in, I think, every forum maybe that y'all have been in, and it's the issue of institutional memory. There's, I guess his thought is that if you have 4 new faces on the Lubbock City Council, in a way, all hell will break loose, and that the major corporations may not look at Lubbock, that the City Council will have a tough time moving into a budget season. What's your answer to that?
Well, again, that's a stretch. I mean, I study this. I've studied this forever. I come from 8 years of being very effective on a local government, the same governance model. I'm entrepreneurial minded. I'm a private business owner. There will be a short study for me. It's a very weak argument to think businesses would not be attracted to us. With a new council and an entrepreneurial spirit on the council, I think you're going to see more businesses be attracted to Lubbock. So that argument must not have been the argument he used 4 years ago when he opposed Mr. Bean. So again, I don't think that has a whole lot of merit. Besides
government not getting into business and not getting into the private property rights issue, you're a business owner. Mm-hmm. There's a possibility that this council could have many business owners on it after this election. What's one of the other top issues for business leaders and businesses here in Lubbock?
Workforce development. There's no doubt about it. We need to support LEDA in the efforts they're undertaking for workforce development. My knowledge of the school district and the work that we did at the Byron Martin Center, which is renowned nationwide for their workforce development efforts, we have got to, and I see it in my business, it's very difficult to find skilled workers in this community. And so when we're talking about attracting businesses to come to Lubbock and reinforcing and building what we already have, we've got to focus on workforce development.
Steve Massengale, candidate for District 4 Lubbock City Council. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks, Chad. Anytime.